alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, mashallah, good morning. I want to ask Allah Ta'ala to bless all of your fasting and my standing and your standing and all of your families. May Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala make this gathering a proof for us and not against us. I pray that you're all healthy and safe. I apologize for yesterday. I didn't sign in till much later. My intention was to be with you at 5 a.m., but my body had a different idea. So please forgive me for any inconvenience that was caused to you or your family. Inshallah ta'ala, I pray that Allah ta'ala make it a means by which you drew close to him and that reward is everlasting. We have a very important chapter today, and it's a chapter that really sums up the essence of what Imam Rumi taught and what he stood for and his message. And it's the only section of this book that's actually a complete vignette, a complete story from the Mathnawi. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We seek the grace and we seek the help of the name, the all-encompassing name of God, the absolutely loving, the ever compassionate. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa ikhwatihi min an-nabiyyin wal mursalin wa sallim taslima. We ask that the divine, that the absolute reality exalts and send peace upon our leader Muhammad and upon his family and upon his companions and upon all the prophets and all the messengers. Before we go into the new section, there's just a few things I wanted to underline or underscore or unpack from the last section. We discussed on everyone having their Qibla. So those of you who were with us 2 mornings ago know that we talked about the Qibla and how every person discovers their true Qibla at some point. And the hope is that that Qibla is in fact the Kaaba, that your Qibla is in fact, ultimately, the Kaaba is an ayah, it's a sign, and it's pointing you to the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which should be the Qibla of the Muslim in their lives, which should be the true aim, the true goal of the Muslim in their lives. But in this physical domain, our Qibla is the Kaaba. That's our aim, that's our goal. But the Qibla of the heart, the Qibla, the direction, the orientation of your heart should always be towards Allah. And Maulana Rumi, our master Rumi, he mentions a number of people, and one of them I went into quite a bit of detail explaining. The Arif Billah, we talked about who the Arif is, the Gnostic, the knower through God, the Gnostic through Allah, the one who knows God not through rational proofs or not through their innate primordial nature, the fitrah, but the one who knows God through God actually introducing himself to that person directly. But I want to talk about another person that Imam Rumi refers to here, the ascetic. What is an ascetic? Sometimes we hear this word ascetic. In Arabic, it's usually translated as zahid, right? A person who is indifferent towards the material world. It also can be translated as someone who abstains from the material world, or someone who Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. Someone, who is detached from this world. Alhamdulillah. And sometimes the word that's used is darwish, right, or dervish, right? So same idea, right? There's someone who's detached. Now, you should not imagine that you have to be poor to be an ascetic, or that you have to give up all of your money and all of your wealth and quit your job and, to be an ascetic, right? The essence of zuhud, of detachment, of indifference towards the material world is one's heart. And that's why Imam Abu Hassan Ashadili, one time he was criticized because Imam Abu Hassan Ashadili, who was a great, great spiritual master, used to wear very nice clothes. He used to wear the finest clothes and he used to ride nice horses. But he was well known in Egypt as a great scholar and a great spiritual master. And someone looked at him one day on his nice horse, wearing his nice threads, his nice garment, and said to him, "You are supposed to be spiritual. You're supposed to be a person of detachment, of zuhud, yet you're wearing all these nice clothes. It doesn't add up." And he said, because the man who was blaming him was dressed in very tattered clothes and simple clothes, the clothes that people of that time usually associated with a spiritual person. He said, "Your clothing is saying I need. Your clothing is saying that you need from others. And so others give you money and give you things because of what your clothing is saying about your inner state. But my clothing is saying I don't need. And my state is only known to Allah. And only Allah can uncover my state." And so he was articulating a principle that a person can be dressed in the finest clothes. A person can live in a mansion. And a person can live in a very wealthy neighborhood, for example, but their heart is not attached to the cars or to the clothes or to the money or to the wealth. Right? Their heart is with Allah. As another great spiritual master, Imam Abdul Qadir al-Jilani used to say, "Let your wealth be in your hands and not in your heart. Let your wealth be in your hands and not in your heart." We could extend that to our modern day age. We could extend the metaphor to say, let your bank account be in your bank account. Let it be in your hands, but don't let your balance, your bank account balance, or whatever your net value is, don't let that be in your heart. Don't define yourself by it. And what's the sign? What's the sign that it's not in your heart? If it decreases, if it's stolen, or if the economy turns upside down, your heart isn't affected. There's no anxiety. There's no stress. There's no fear. There's no worry. So this is who an ascetic is. Right? This is who an ascetic is. Can we turn that off? Right? This is who an ascetic is. And the spiritual person, again, that he's talking about, the one who's seeking a spiritual path, he talks about later on, saying that the spirit, so he says the Qibla of the ascetic is God, the gracious, right? He says the gracious because the ascetic they're detached from this world because of their recognition of the bounty of God himself. They have more confidence and trust in what is in the hands of Allah, of God, than what is in their hand. Now, the spiritual person, again, is not based on how a person dresses. And a lot of us, because of our conditioning, because of our social conditioning, which is what happens to you once you've lived with your families or in your society, your culture for a certain time. We think that a spiritual person, many of us, a spiritual person is a man who, wears a kufi, or a skull cap, a topi, and has a beard, and a woman who has a scarf, and we might add other things to that. They wear very modest clothing, and they, depending on our exposure and our knowledge of Islam, and particularly of the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad, God bless him and grant him peace, we may also attach to that maybe they're also someone who's very serious all the time, or someone, if we are acquainted with the character of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, we know that he was the most smiling of people when he was with people. So that we may associate being cheerful with spirituality. You go to certain retreats and conferences, and all the spiritual people have certain accessories that they wear, right? They have the pins and the shawls, and and the more a person gets involved in such communities, the number of their accessories increases. And there's nothing wrong with that. In principle, there's nothing wrong with dressing modestly in principle, and wearing a beard, and covering with a headscarf. All of these things are from the Quran. They're from the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But the issue here is when those outward manifestations of religion and of obedience to God are not accompanied with an inner reality. And so here, Imam Rumi gets to the essence of spirituality, which is not how you look, but rather it is how your heart responds, to trials and calamities. So he says the Qibla, the aim, the goal of the spiritual person is what? Patience and long suffering. So when the blows of fate, when you feel the blows of fate, your response is sabr, which means patient perseverance. Sabr, or patient perseverance, is to endure the hardships and the trials and the disappointments that inevitably will come. Some of us experience them right when we're born. Some people experience hardships right in the womb of their mothers, because of their mothers, whatever stress their mother may be under, or whatever bad choices their mother may be making. Other people, it might take 20 years after their birth for them to experience really their first trial or tribulation. Right now, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we're experiencing a global hardship. But the person, as the Prophet Muhammad, God bless him and grant him peace, said, patient perseverance is at the first blow. He said that, meaning true patience when you respond to difficulty in the very beginning with patient perseverance. That's spirituality. Right? So a man who has a beard, right, like mine or longer than mine, but isn't patient with, and there's Imam al-Ghazali mentions 5 kinds of patience, right? If he doesn't show patience for what God sends him from good and from evil, then he's really not that spiritual. Outwardly, yes, he's following one of the sunnahs of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but the sunnah of patience, he's not following. And patience is one of the core pillars of spirituality, of Quranic spirituality. Inna Allah yuhibbu sabir. Wallahu yuhibbu sabir. Allah loves those who have patient perseverance. Allah is with, Inna Allah ma'as sabirin. Allah, God is with those who patiently persevere. Right? There's no verse, I don't want to belittle, but Allah Ta'ala only says in the Quran that He loves those who have certain qualities. And that is it. Allah does not say in any verse of the Quran that He loves, I'm saying explicitly says that He loves a person because of what they're wearing or how long their beard is. Now, but rather Allah says that He loves people based on the character of their soul. Right? So this is what spirituality is. Now that spirituality will naturally manifest if it starts from here, from the inside out. It will naturally manifest in certain physical expressions, right? But know that that is not what defines spirituality, brothers and sisters. And I have, and I'm sure you have met many people who outwardly, they may not look like they're very religious, right? But when you see them in, in the trenches of life, you realize how much gold they're carrying in their hearts. Right? And that's what life is about. That's really what spirituality is about. It's about your character. So in long suffering, right, being able to endure, again, difficulty without contempt for others, without bitterness, without resentment of God or resentment of people. This is what real spirituality is. It's not going to the vicars every Thursday or every Saturday. It's not going to the Mawlid, in Rabiul Awal. It's not, going to the Hadra, or all of those things are meant, all of these gatherings, and having, Rumi books and Al-Ghazali books and books, about the great Sufi saints and sages of the past in your book, in your library. That's not what makes you spiritual. That's not what makes you spiritual. All of these that I just mentioned are tools to help you bring spirituality into your heart and into your life, but they don't define you as spiritual. So I just wanted to make those points, inshallah ta'ala, so that we're all clear on Imam al-Rumi's approach, inshallah. Now let's go to our new subject matter. So today, the title of today's section is No Gain, or rather, I'll put it like this, no pain, no gain. No pain, no gain. Now, if any of you go to the gym or you have a personal trainer, either one that's, that comes to you or you go to or that you follow online, if you work out in any kind of capacity, if you used to be an athlete, maybe you had a coach, you've heard this before, right? No pain, no gain. No pain, no gain. The poet Imam Rumi says, may God have mercy upon him. May God benefit us through his knowledge, his spiritual rank. So he starts with a story, brothers and sisters. Now hear this tale from a true narrator of the customs and ways of the men of Qazwin. Unflinching, they get themselves tattooed with a needle point on body, arms, and shoulders. To the tattooist went a man of Qazwin, saying, "Tattoo me, make it a real beauty." "What design would you like, champ?" the artist inquired. "Do me a fierce lion," the customer said. Right, so this is the scenario. Imam Rumi is talking about the men of a particular tribe who get themselves tattooed, and they're renowned, they're famous for not expressing, not showing any pain when they get tattooed. And so they go to this tattoo artist, and so one of them goes to this tattoo artist and makes this request that, they want a lion. They want a lion tattooed on their body. "Do me a fierce lion," the customer said. "Leo's my ascendant, so draw me a lion. Do your utmost and pencil it dark and bold." Right? So Leo, meaning his sign, his zodiac, right? His zodiac is Leo, and so he wants a lion on his body. And make it dark and bold, right? "Where shall I draw this figure?" the tattooist asked. "Put that lion on my shoulder blade," the other replied. The tattooist started pressing his needle in, and his customer's shoulder was racked with pain. Our hero began wailing. Notice his choice of words. Imam Rumi says, "Our hero began wailing. Distinguished sir, you're killing me. What is that you are drawing?" The tattooist said, "A lion is what you ordered." "What part did you start with?" the customer asked. "I began with the tail end," the artist replied. "Leave the tail out, dear friend," the champion said. "Leave the tail out, dear friend," the champion said. "Tail and tail end have knocked the breath out of me. The lion's tail has got a hold of my windpipe. Lionsmith, tell the lion to be tailless, for my heart is faint from the blows of that spike." The tattooist started etching in a different spot without any care or caution or compunction. The man yelled out, "What part is this now?" "My good sir, it's the ear," the tattooist replied. "Then let it be earless, doctor," said the man. "Forget the ears and keep the picture simple." So the tattooing started in another place, but the man of Qazwin began bawling again. "What's this third part that you're working on?" "This is the belly of the lion, illustrious sir." "Let the lion do without a belly," said the champ. "Cut the needlework down, for the pain is too much." The tattooist, flummoxed, was now at a loss. For a long while, his fingers remained in his mouth. You know that look, right, where you're just kind of biting down on your nails, not sure what to say? Then, enraged, the artist threw his pen to the ground and exclaimed, "Has anyone in the world suffered this? Who ever saw a lion with no tail, head, or belly? God himself has never created such a lion." Brother, and now Rumi speaks, right? The story's over now. That's the end of the story. That's the end of the story. And now Rumi, the narrator, he comes in and says, "Brother, brave the pain of the lancet to escape the poison in your fire-worshiping self." Rumi just gave us like a right hook to the temple. Brother or sister, brave the pain of the lancet. The lancet is the needle, right? To escape the poison in your fire worshiping self. For the sky, the sun, and the moon bow down before those who've escaped from self-centered existence. For the sky, the sun, and the moon bow down. They prostrate before those who've escaped from self-centered existence. And that ends this section. It's from the first volume of the Mesnawi, and it is in verses 2,981 to 3,003. So there's a lot there. And I'm going to go directly into Dr. Muhammad Isa Wali's commentary. May Allah preserve him and benefit us by him. And I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions. And inshallah, God willing, if I need to add something, then I will, if I feel moved to add something. So he says, owing to the format of the Treasury, right, the Treasury series, it has only been possible to include one full-length story of the Methnawi. And here it is. And I encourage you all to actually, get others of this series in Islamic thought and civilization. There's a treasury of hadith, right? There's a treasury of Al-Ghazali. There's a treasury of sacred maxims in Usul al-Fiqh, in Islamic legal theory. There's a treasury of Ibn Taymiyyah. There's a treasury of Rumi, which is what we're reading. And there's a treasury of Iqbal that is forthcoming. It hasn't been published yet. But for many of you, and I know many of you that go to the Muslim Center of Greater Princeton, many of you are fans of Iqbal. Many of our brothers and sisters from India and Pakistan and Bangladesh are fans of Iqbal. Anyone with a heart and with a mind loves Iqbal, right? Anyone who loves brilliance loves Iqbal, of course. And so these are short books. They're small. You can literally put them, in your coat pocket. But usually the selections are very short. And so what the commentator is saying that because of the format of these series, he could only include one full-length story. And the Mesnawi is made up of stories from the Quran, stories from the life of Prophet Muhammad, God bless him and grant him peace, stories from Anatolian Ottoman culture, stories from Afghanistan, and stories from India, and stories, from the ancient world, right, that are not necessarily Islamic. Rumi brings together, he weaves together all these stories, and he spins all of these tales to illustrate and to demonstrate points and principles and truths. And so again, you would expect a scholar of the stature of someone like Imam Rumi, who was, again, before he met his spiritual companion, Shams Tabriz, he was respected as a great scholar, a great judge, an alim, a gifted speaker, gifted teacher. You wouldn't expect him to have stories from, folktale stories and stories that you might hear. It's like the equivalent of an American Muslim scholar going to the masjid and telling stories about, Paul Bunyan, right? Johnny Appleseed, for example, or, Aesop's fables, Mother Goose tales, and other folklore, right? legends that are common among the people. He used these because that's what the people are familiar with, right? That's why everyone almost is watching Netflix, because they like stories. Human beings like stories, right? And the more rich the story and the more capable and skilled the storyteller, the more people are able to learn something about their own story, right, from these stories. And so this is the first and the only full-length story that's in this particular offering. Now, the moral of the tale is clear, isn't it? And it's summarized in the heading: no pain, no gain. Note that, so there's a disclaimer here, or I guess clarification. Note that tattooing is not permitted by Islamic law. Now, if someone becomes a Muslim and they already had a tattoo, and I know many people like this, they don't have to remove it, right? Because removing it can be very expensive and very painful as well. And we should not look down on such people. We should not stigmatize such brothers and sisters for having those, that body art, for example. But what tattooing stands for, so know that Rumi is not endorsing tattooing here, right? So he's expecting a certain maturity from his audience. There are some Muslim brothers and sisters that have this knee-jerk reaction that anything a scholar says is automatically encouraging it. It's not true. There's something deeper going on here. We have to be more mature and more intellectually nuanced as Muslims. He says, what tattooing stands for here is self-improvement, self-development. It's a symbol. Why do they get the tattoo? And to show, of course, their, this is most likely, this is very similar to many initiations. We talked about this last week, where men and some and women as well, they receive many cultures around the world, now fewer than there were about 100 years ago. They receive tattoos and they, scar their bodies or they file their teeth as not just a form of beautification, but to show that they become truly men or truly women. They go through these very painful body modification processes to demonstrate that they can endure intense pain without flinching, without crying, without weeping, and without expressing emotion. And so it's a part of becoming an adult, right? To go through some ordeal and not express emotion. It shows that you're in control. And if you do cry or weep, whether it's during a tattooing event or whether it's in a circumcision, in these rites of passage, initiation ceremonies, then you failed. You're not a man. You're not a woman, right? You failed. And so this is also probably what's going on here. So he says, the tattooing here stands for self-improvement, which for the He-Man of Qazwin, which is the city in northwest Iran, took that particular form. In Persian, putting a finger in your mouth signifies amazement, bafflement, or despair. We could add frustration to that. Some modern Rumi interpreters present him as a proponent of the notion that I'm okay, you're okay. Some of you are familiar with that book. My father and mother used to have that book in their library. I used to see it when I was a little child. I used to say, I'm okay, you're okay. I had no idea what it was talking about. But this idea of, every everything's fine with you, everything's chill. And that Rumi is some kind of pop, self-help guru. And that's how he's been presented. But as you can see from this story, that's far from an accurate representation of Rumi. That's a well curated, pedicured, manicured Rumi that's been presented for public consumption and to sell books. Also, verses such as the oft-quoted lines, meaning come again, whoever you are. Ours is not a caravan of despair, even if you've broken your oath 1,000 times. Are you all familiar with this? I'm sure many of you have heard this line that's attributed to Rumi. He actually did not say that, or at least we cannot verify that he said that. It's been wrongly attributed to him. Come again, whoever you are. Even though that's one of the most popular sayings attributed to Rumi, you even find Muslim scholars attributing that to him. But actually, he did not say that, or we cannot attribute it to him. He would certainly have agreed with the actual author of those lines, that this court of ours is not the court of despair, for the door of repentance, of turning back to God, is open to all. But that is not the keynote of his teachings. And I would even say that Rumi, if you read him, he would even agree with the line, come again, whoever you are, right? He was at his funeral. I don't know if you all are aware of that. At his funeral, there were 50,000 people plus from 5 different religions who attended his janaza, his funeral. That is how loved and respected he was, and how he was able to connect with people, all religions. 50,000 plus people from 5 different religions were present at his funeral and his burial. Now, that does not mean that they all participated in the ritual funeral. Salatul Janazah, of course, was performed for him by his co-religionists, his Muslim co-religionists. But what I'm saying is that the historical reports mention that present at their funeral were people of other religions who learned from Rumi, who loved him, who respected him, who benefited from his teachings, right? And so, yes, he was very universal. And that's something that a lot of the modern interpreters do capture. But I was reading a friend of mine, Omid Safi, on his social media page. He was talking about how a lot of people complain about Islam being ripped out of Rumi. He said, that's true. Islam has been ripped out of Rumi. But we should also be concerned about Rumi being ripped out of Islam, meaning by Muslims who are unwilling to allow him to take his rightful place in our scholastic, for him to take his rightful place in our scholastic tradition. If one had to summarize Rumi's message in one sentence, something like this might be closer to the mark. Right? So this is it. If you truly desire everlasting happiness, give your love to God and trust in him, and leave your comfort zone behind. If you truly desire everlasting happiness, give your love completely to God, and place your total absolute trust in him, and leave your comfort zone behind. Leave your attachment to comfort. And I would add, especially for us people here in America and in Europe, we should leave our convenience behind, because what anyone who's been on a spiritual seeker, a spiritual seeker of God, knows that it's not about your convenience. In fact, spirituality is very inconvenient. And that's what makes it very difficult for a lot of our brothers and sisters who are tied up, in, their careers, or, their businesses, because modern business is a very, very unforgiving taskmaster. Things have to be done a certain way by a certain time. All right. Otherwise, your competitors, your shareholders, it's a lot of pressure, right? Spirituality is just as demanding, if not more, right? Like true spirituality. And when Allah calls you, you have to go. When Allah calls you, and I'm not talking about dying, leaving this world, I'm saying when Allah calls you to the spiritual path, you have to go. You have to go. When Allah wakes you up, you have to get up. You can't hit the snooze button. It's not convenient. It's not something that you necessarily at all times can fit neatly into your Google Calendar, right? And that's why Ramadan comes when it comes, regardless of what is happening. How many of us, and this is what the Arabs used to do, right? They would play around with the sacred months. They would move them, move them around based on their convenience. Not anymore. When the Prophet Muhammad came, God bless him and grant him peace, boom, fixed. Can't move them around, right? How many of us, if we could, would have said, you know what, COVID-19, we have a pandemic, we need to, push Ramadan back. Push Ramadan back a few months, right? So that we can get through this, get on the other side of this, and we can fast in the masjid and have tarawih. If it was allowed in Islam to do that, how many of us would not have voted yes for that? No. Spirituality is not convenient. Ramadan comes at this time, right? Spirituality is about Allah's time, and Allah knows what's best for you. Allah knows what's best for me. And so we're going to end with that. All I want to add in conclusion is simply look at how Rumi uses this story, which is, again, doesn't sound like a very Islamic story. You have someone having quote unquote haram body art done on their bodies. It is using that story to illustrate and to make a point and convey a truth. Like this man who wants this lion, right? He wants a lion tattooed on his body, but it actually in his heart, he lacks courage. Lions are known for their courage, right? Lions are the king of the beasts, right? A lion, it's majesty, it's jalal. But this man of Qazwin has no jalal, right? So for those of you that are artists, Muslim artists, this should, again, inspire you, right? This should inspire you, right? That you don't have to make every movie, every song, every movie, or really any songs or any movies, they don't necessarily have to have a packaging that is palatable to religious people, right? And you'll find a number of stories. If you've ever read the Mesnavi, you will find stories that make, this is like rated G, right? The story I just read. But there are some stories in the Mesnavi that I would call rated R. But yeah, he has such stories in the Mesnavi. If they were made into a movie, it would definitely be rated R, right? But um, again, he's making a point, and he's also grabbing our attention, and he's using the elements and the symbols in the story to as symbolic as messages and as symbols to convey the teachings that he wants us to take to our hearts. And also these stories that really shock you, and some of the stories in the Mesnavi are shocking. They are shocking stories. You remember them, right? You remember them. I mean, yesterday we were looking at Surah Yusuf, right? Surah Yusuf, peace and blessings be upon the chapter of Joseph in the Quran. And I mean, if that was made into a movie, see, the thing about the Quran, though, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tells the story in such a way that it is so, it's speaking about it is so, sensitive, right? But the words he uses are so honorable and so dignified that you could show the story to a child and, there'd be no problem, right? So you have this woman, Zulekha, Allah have mercy on her, because the Muslim tradition, our old tradition, says that she repented later on, and she became a great saint herself. But at the beginning, when we find her in the story of Surah of Prophet Joseph, she's trying to seduce him, right? This is in the Quran, right? Seducing, seduction is not rated G, right? You have his brothers trying to murder him, right? Trying to murder him, So the drama of such stories are what really attract and endear them to us. And I think that's all I wanted to add. There's a lot that can be said about this story, but again, the point is that in your life, and one of my teachers always used to say this to us, people are praying 17 times a day. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. Oh Allah, guide us along the straight path. And then when Allah removes something from their lives that's preventing their journey on the straight path, they get scared, or they get upset, or they get depressed, and they ask Allah to put it back, right? Or when Allah puts something on their path to help them travel the straight path, again, they get scared, they get upset, they get angry, and they ask Allah to take it away. Well, everything that Allah sends us is an answer to that prayer. Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim. Guide us along the straight path. And it might be painful, like the needle of the tattooist that Rumi's talking about. The very thing that Allah sends you may be painful. And sometimes the thing that Allah removes from your life, and it might be, it might be a loved one, it might be a job, it might be a business opportunity, it might be your reputation, it might be money, it could be health. But know that whatever Allah gives or takes away, it's so that you and I can get closer to Him. Now, it doesn't mean that you should be apathetic about what happens in your life and, fatalistic. Oh, whatever happens, Allah's decreed it, and so I can't do anything. No. Imam al-Ghazali says in the Ihya, it is magnum opus, the revival of the sciences of the way, that you only have sabr with what you cannot control. You only admit to and surrender to with that which you cannot control. If you can, change the temperature all right, on the air condition or the heater, you get up out of your seat and you go change it, right? But if you're in a situation where you cannot change your circumstances, then you have sabr. And as I said earlier, and I'll end with this, there's 5 kinds of sabr. Imam Ghazali says there's sabr, there's patient perseverance with obedience, even though you don't feel like staying up to pray Salatul Duha. You really would pray right now, even though you don't feel like fasting, even though you don't feel like reciting Quran, even though you don't feel like praying, 5 times a day on time, or praying Fajr, you do it. That's sabr with obedience. The second kind of sabr, or patient perseverance, is patient perseverance against disobeying God. Even though it's hard, maybe for you or for me, to stay away from alcohol or marijuana or vaping, or to not look at pornography, or to not lie or cheat, or to gossip or rumor. You restrain yourself. You restrain yourself from that temptation. That's sabr against disobeying God. The third kind of patience, Imam Ghazali says, is patience in the face of calamities and trials, tribulations. This global pandemic, COVID-19, is an example, right? Out of our control completely, all right? And I would encourage us to stop saying words like natural disaster, right? I think natural calamity might be closer, right? Maybe there's a better way to put it, but anything Allah decrees, I would not call a disaster. It's a calamity, inshallah. So you bear that, right? You bear what's happening now. And then fourthly, there's patient perseverance with blessings. So there's patient perseverance with calamities, but there's patient perseverance with blessings. Now, and Imam Suhaib Sultan, may Allah give him healing, he mentioned this in his first blog, his first letter, in which he announced his diagnosis, which is, he said, many people are tested by trials. I have been tested in my life with blessings, meaning Allah gives you what you want. Allah gives you what you need. Allah gives you more than what you need. Allah gives you abundance, and resources and comfort and, contacts. And now sabr is using that. Patient perseverance is using all of that for good and using it effectively and managing it, being a steward, being a responsible steward of those blessings. That is also another kind of sabr. And then the last sabr, and Imam al-Ghazali and others say this is actually the most difficult. This is the hardest of all the kinds of sabr, of patient perseverance a human being can endure. You think you know what it is? It's sabr with other people. It's being patient and persevering, striving with the harm of other people, other human beings. Like, that's the most difficult sabr. And many of us are experiencing that. Staying at home with your families for 2 months now, almost, right? that takes a lot of sabr, right? That's why some of these people are protesting out there with, automatic weapons at the state capitals. It takes a lot of sabr. Now I was, talking to a friend of mine yesterday afternoon about, some of the, the ulterior motives that may be going on. But, it's with this COVID-19 pandemic, and agendas, or political agendas and economic agendas, and yes, there may be some merit to that, right? To those news stories that are coming out now. But this is a very real virus. It is a very real sickness. And you and I, we all know people either directly or indirectly who've died from this. People who didn't die from the flu, right? But again, sabr with people, having sabr with your family, with your boss, with your co-workers, with your employees, sabr with the person who just almost ran you off the road into the railing, the median, right? Almost killed you. Having sabr with the people that are around you that inevitably will disappoint you or cause you some kind of harm with their tongues or with their hands. And so that's the greatest form of sabr, and it's the one that has the greatest reward. And may Allah Ta'ala just remember that Allah loves those who have sabr, and Allah loves those who are patient. No pain, no gain. Inshallah, we will open up for questions and comments. Bismillah. Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Sister Tamara. I apologize. Wa yakum. Yes, the class time changed yesterday. And actually, I missed it yesterday at the new time. I signed in a lot later. And but yeah, it's changed to 5 a.m. now. Alhamdulillah. Any questions, any comments? We'll just take those for a few minutes before we make a prayer and pray. Zainab, Sister Zainab asks, wa alaikum salam, Sister Zainab, what's the difference between murid and murad? The murid, so the word murid, which means one who's willing, someone who is aspiring, someone who's seeking. That's what murid means. And the word murid is generally used by Muslims to indicate a Muslim who is not content just offering and observing rituals, but they really are seeking something deeper, a deeper connection with Allah. They're seeking the knowledge that's in the ritual. As Imam Warathuddin Muhammad, Allah have mercy on him, used to say that there's knowledge in each ritual. Imam Warathuddin Muhammad, one of the great American, Muslim leaders and thinkers and spiritual guides. He said there's knowledge in each ritual. The 5 pillars, there's knowledge. You have to find the knowledge. You have to ask Allah to help you get to that knowledge. That's what a murid is, right? A murid is someone who, as Allah says in the Quran, in the chapter of the cave, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Make your soul patient with those who call upon their master, their divine master, meaning God, in the mornings and the evenings, yuriduna wajha, desiring or seeking or aspiring to his face, which means his essence. They are calling on God in the mornings, like at this time, the time that's, before, like an hour before Fajr up until sunrise, they're calling on God. And they're calling on God in the evenings from the last hour of the day until sunset. Not desiring money, not desiring fame, but desiring the essence of God, seeking the face of God. That's a murid. A murid is someone who is seeking God. The murad is someone who God is seeking. So one is an active participle, grammatically speaking, and the other is a passive participle. The murid is a seeker, is the one who is seeking, and the murad is the one who is being sought. And there's a big difference between the two. There's a hadith about that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said paradise yearns for three people. Right? The garden, Jannah, it longs, it's longing, it misses three people. Ali, he named him Ali, the son of Abu Talib, his cousin, and his successor, fourth successor of the Khilafah, his son-in-law. Ammar bin Yasir, right? Ammar and Bilal al-Habashi. Ammar, who we all know the family of Yasir, his mother, Sumayya bint Khayyat, the Abyssinian, al-Habashiyah, was the first martyr of Islam. Ammar's mother. The Prophet ﷺ said the paradise was yearned for Ammar. And Bilal also, like Ammar's mother, was from Ethiopia, Abyssinian. Paradise yearned for these three. And in another narration of the hadith, but the train is not as strong as far as I remember, it mentions Salman as the third person instead of Ammar, if I'm not mistaken. Salman al-Farisi, Salman the Persian, right? So paradise is, most of us, we are yearning for paradise, right? We want paradise, but the Prophet ﷺ said paradise wants these people, was yearning for these people, which says something about them, that their character, their spirits, were not from this world, right? Because why would paradise yearn for those people, except that there is an affinity and a likeness and a similarity in the natures of Ali and Salman and Ammar and Bilal and the nature of paradise. Right? So that's the difference between the murid and the murad. The murad is very, 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 it's someone who, subhanAllah, being a murad could be very difficult because it means that Allah wants you. And when I say want, I don't mean need, because Allah has no needs. But Allah loves this person and Allah is guiding this person. It doesn't matter how far they try to get away or how far into the dunya they want to go. Allah's going to send message after message after message and messenger after messenger after messenger. Tayyib, Murad. Yeah, it's a very common name in Turkey, actually, Murad. And also I think in Pakistan, and I know a lot of Murads from Pakistan as well. But you usually find people who, are connected with the Persian Islamic civilization. Usually you find the name Murad with people that are connected with Persian Islamic civilization. There's basically two kinds of, this is kind of a side note, but there's basically two kinds of Islamic civilizations. There's the Arab civilization and then Persian, right? And then everything else kind of falls under that. And they're not necessarily by geography. The Indian subcontinent is mostly Persian, but the Malay archipelago is mostly Arab, right? In terms of its, approach to Islam. I think in America, we need something that is possibly, that transcends that dichotomy. And but I think if we were going to follow one, the Arab orientation or approach to Islam, or the Persian orientation to Islam that you see in Turkey, in India, and Pakistan, Afghanistan, I think that for Americans and Europeans in particular, I think the Persian orientation is much more appealing and much more has a flavor, that's much more palatable. And Allah knows best. But America is a tossed salad, right? A melting pot. So maybe we just need all of it here. So we'll see what Allah has for us in the future, inshallah. MashaAllah. Someone wrote privately, my dear brother, he wrote it privately, so I won't say his name, but I love to say your name, alhamdulillah. One of my dear old friends says, wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for sharing that quote of Imam Wartadi Muhammad, rahmatullah alayhi. Of course, yeah, have to. Imam Wartadi Muhammad was a great spiritual guide. He wasn't just a Muslim leader and theologian and the son of Elijah Muhammad who brought, hundreds of thousands of people to Islam. Incredible interfaith ambassador. I said, again, a spiritual guide. And I don't say that lightly. There's a book he has called The Spirit Never Dies that I have in my library. It just shows you just a glimpse of his, we were talking the other day about Ma'rifah, right? Of gnosis of God. It just gives you a glimpse of the gnosis of Imam Wartadi Muhammad. He was a great saint. I believe he was a great saint, and alhamdulillah. Okay, someone asks, okay, so then there's another question. Can you repeat the earlier quote about loving God and leaving comfort? May Allah reward you as well. Yeah, so that's a quote actually from Dr. Muhammad Isa Wali, who's the translator and the commentator. And again, it's significant because he believes this really is the essence of Rumi's teaching. And the quote is, if you truly desire everlasting happiness. In Arabic, we say, as-sa'ada al-abadiyya, eternal happiness. In this life and in the life after death. Give your love to God and trust in him. Meaning, yes, there will be times in your life that are very difficult, very painful, right? But your love of God and your trust in God are what enable you to endure the pain. Because on the other side of that pain is your own improvement, your self-improvement, your self-development, and ultimately, you're taking your place, to use a phrase from the Bible, in the kingdom of God, right? You're given your maqam, your station of wilaya, and each and every one of you, all these beautiful names that I'm seeing in front of me, on my grid, each and every one of you has a particular maqam, a particular station of wilaya, of sainthood that you were created for. There's a particular aspect of ma'rifah billah, of knowing God through God that you were particularly created for. And you have the potential to attain, each and every one of you, each and every one of you, each and every one of you, each person, regardless of, their physical or mental ability, regardless of their economic status, of their nationality, or their religion. Allah created each person to hold some aspect of knowledge of him that is particular to you. And you, inshallah, are supposed to hold that for humanity, for the rest of us. And some of you, or a few of us, we're also tasked with sharing that with the rest of the world, right? Or at least our community. And so to go back to the quote, it says, if you truly desire everlasting happiness, give your love to God and trust in him and leave your comfort zone behind. Forget about comfort. And anyone who, has studied, who sought knowledge, traditional classical Islamic knowledge, at the very beginning, all your teachers tell you, what do the ulama tell you? The scholars at the beginning, get ready. Get ready for exhaustion. Get ready for discomfort. Get ready for pain. That's what they tell you when you start studying. You're like, whoa, what did I sign up for? And anyone who's been overseas, who's left the United States, even those people who've never left the United States, but they studied the Islamic sciences here at the hands and feet of the scholars, they know, suffering, pain and suffering come with the territory. Sickness comes with the territory. Poverty comes with the territory. Insecurity comes with the territory. And Many of our brothers and sisters, who've gone overseas, mashallah, all of them, they've been through so much, and you don't even know. You don't know what they've been through. Diseases that you would never get here, right? And anyway, so no pain, no gain is the point. Leave your comfort zone behind. And so is it possible that the murad doesn't go through any pain? The pain Rumi talks about? Not necessarily. The murad is someone that Allah is seeking. And so Allah Ta'ala may seek you through his attributes of grace and beauty and mercy, or Allah may seek you through his attributes of rigor and majesty and power that can be, not always, not necessarily, but can be quite terrifying. So even the murad, even though the murad is someone that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, that person is beloved to Allah ta'ala. But as a result, Allah may cut the person off from everything else. May cut them off from everything else. Their freedom, right? Some people who end up in prison are murads. So Allah puts them in prison. Sometimes, they're innocent, like Prophet Joseph. Anyone who saw the movie Just Mercy, right? If you haven't watched it after Ramadan, and if you watch movies, you should watch that movie about Brian Stevenson and the work he does. He's an incredible attorney who helps people who have been wrongfully imprisoned for decades, like 20, 30, 40 years of their lives, just, right? And he helps them get free. Right? Allah Ta'ala decreed for those people to be put there, like Prophet Joseph, but it might be that, and in the movie, this is illustrated. You find deeply spiritual people who are focused on God in those places, right? And I've heard miraculous stories about some of the Muslims that are inmates in prison. It might be that Allah caused that person to be framed and be the victim of an unjust criminal system, just so that that person could be in a space where they're not distracted, and Allah knows best, So yeah, a person who's murad could go through prison, right? Just so that he can not be distracted by anything else but Allah Ta'ala. What is the African orientation? So generally the African orientation is an Arab orientation, and you can see this in the way they teach people Quran, the way they teach Arabic language, for instance. They use a lot of the standard Arabic text. Their approach to, but again, I say that, with this also, that the African orientation also has its unique aspects, and that goes for every other part of the Muslim world. There's a particularly Arab approach, right, that you'll find in North Africa, East Africa, West Africa, and Malaysia, Indonesia. But then under that, you will find a very vibrant, rich indigenous manifestation of Islam that at times is odd. It's at odds, bumps heads with the Arab orientation. And that's why the last 100 years, a lot of young people who, went to certain schools in Saudi Arabia to study, and they learned like a very Salafi approach to Islam, which is very Arab-centric, right? Arab cultural centric. They went back to Nigeria, or they went back to Indonesia, or they went back to Singapore, and they started, really causing a lot of trouble, because it's culturally cannibalistic, right? Anything that's not Arab culture is now un-Islamic, and that's not true, right? Islam doesn't come to wipe away cultures, and especially cultures that are non-Arab. No, Islam comes to enhance, to purify those cultures of anything that harms the human soul. And so that's why you filter the culture through the Quran. You filter the culture through the authentic hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. But Arab culture is not or even Persian culture should not be a standard. And so with African Islam or Islam in Africa, you do find, like you'd find with Islam in India and Malaysia, there's a synthesis of whatever the dominant Arab or Persian, I guess, vessel is with the indigenous cultures. And that's one of those of you who know me, who've studied with me over the years, some of you, I see your names, you've been studying with me for 10 years or more. May Allah reward you for your patience. You know that this is something that I think is imperative for us as American Muslims, especially those of you who have been in America, your families, for generations like mine, right? Many, many generations, 100 years, 200 years you've been here in America, 300 years you've been in America. We owe it to the Muslim community to have an orientation of Islam that, of course, is within the Quran, within the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, but is also true to who we are as Americans, right? To the spirit, to the ethos of Americans. And so it may not necessarily look like Islam in Malaysia, or Islam in India, or Islam in Nigeria. It may not look like that, or feel like that, or even smell like it, or taste like it, our Muslim culture here in America. And we have to have the courage and the knowledge and the insight and the help from Allah Ta'ala to do that, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Maryam. Okay, can you advise interesting spiritual books for age between 10 to 18 years old? Yeah, there's a book here. It's funny, almost every other class I'm reaching behind me, but that's here. Yeah, so there's a book here. I just so happens a lot of books are behind me because I kind of curated this mini library for my children. And so this is a book called Rumi Stories for Young Adults. Rumi Stories for Young Adults from the Mesnawi. It's a really nice book. Pages that you just mentioned, Sister Maryam, and it's translated and adapted from the Persian by Muhammad Noor Abdus Salam, with illustrations by Rose Gajar Bakhtiar, and it's published by the ABC International Group. And there are books that have the stories of Mullah Nasruddin or Khoja Nasruddin that I find really, really helpful for teaching children about spirituality, especially younger children. If you go to the website Tughra Books, that's Tughra, 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 Tughra Books. They have a lot of really good spiritual books for young children and for teenagers. I've been really impressed by what they have. Also, Mecca books, right? Started by my friend Attar Jatoy. They have a really good children's selection. Fons Vitae has started to produce the Imam Ghazali books for children, which I think are a bit much. Imam Ghazali wrote the Ihya al-Ulumuddin for scholars, right? We should never forget that. Scholars who had lost their path, and to bring them back to the essence of Islam. That's why he wrote the Ihya al-Ulumuddin. He didn't write it for children. But if I was advising Fons Vitae, if I was on their consultancy board or something, I would tell them to have stories in those books rather than a lot of principles. But they have both, and so it makes the books quite large. And so what I would do if you were going to use the Ghazali series books for children, I would read them first and then take out the stories, right, and use the stories with your children to illustrate the points on spirituality that are made. What other children's books? There's stories on the companions that Noura Durki translated. The Companion, I forget what it's called. The Companions. If you type in Noura Durki,
Noura, and last name Durkee. She has some books on the companions that my wife really loves. My wife would be my wife Ruqayya, may Allah preserve her, would be a much better person to ask this question. So I don't know if she's on here. She can't go upstairs because the alarms, the children's alarms kept going off. But if she's on here, maybe she'll chime in. But yeah, there's a lot of good books for children, a lot more than there were 20 years ago. And if you go to some of these booksellers, you'll find, just to look at the children's sections, but Tugra books, Mecca books, good places to start. Yeah, inshallah khair. And then the other thing I think we really should not miss is that this story is an illustration of, is it really, every story is a spiritual story, Sister Maya, right? I mean, here's a man getting a tattoo, right? And Rumi is teaching a spiritual lesson from that. And I have a good friend of mine, Ali Hussein. He just got his PhD in Islamic Studies from University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. He's really good at this, and he has these retreats for young people, for youth, mostly high school, college age, where he goes, he'll analyze a movie, a movie that's really popular. It might be a blockbuster, right? Or it might be an independent movie, or he'll analyze the lyrics of a song. He won't play the song necessarily, but he will have the lyrics of a pop song, that's in popular culture that your children probably have heard, and he'll show how it's teaching deep spiritual truths, the movie or the music, of someone who's non-Muslim. And he'll use that to bring the youth back to those truths that are in the Quran, and thereby show them, look, the Quran is relevant. You may not be accustomed to taking this truth from the Quran, right? Because you've inherited your Islam from your parents, but you still love truth. You love truth. And the sign that you love truth is that in this movie or this music that you like so much, this is what they're saying, And so, people like Ali Hussein, he has a nostalgic, he has a 501c3 he started, I think it's called Nostalgic, I forget. But if you type in Ali Hussein and nostalgic, you should find it, inshallah ta'ala. So he's really good at that. He'll go through Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. I mean, he's really skilled at showing people the spiritual truth in popular culture. And there's a few other brothers and sisters who are doing that, not enough. I would like to do it, but I don't know if I could keep my job as an Imam if I came in talking about Batman movies and the spirituality of the Avengers. I don't know how long that would last. Let's see. Salam, what's the name of the movie about Prophet Joseph you mentioned? I don't think I mentioned a movie about him. You may have misheard me. But if someone else remembers me saying that there was a movie about Prophet Joseph, peace be upon him, then please remind me. I don't remember saying that there was a movie. I may have just been speaking very clearly, or I'm sorry, quickly or unclearly. Someone wrote, old friend of mine from the Atlanta crew, Jazakallah khairan Sheikh, for another beautiful reminder, mashallah, how much effort must we put in before we have sabr and put trust in Allah? Should our efforts be completely exhaustive, or should they be merely reasonable, hoping that Allah puts barakah in the small amount of work we do? Yeah, for many of us who are beginners, and I consider myself a beginner. I am not saying that to be modest. I consider myself a beginner. My wife will tell you I'm a beginner. My children will tell you I'm a beginner. I am a beginner. You just do the best you can. Be reasonable, be moderate, and it's like Maryam, Lady Maryam. peace be upon her, Allah told her, "Huzi, huzi ilayk," shake the tree. Many of the scholars say there's no way for her to shake the tree. First of all, she's in labor. Second of all, it's a palm tree. It's not moving, most likely, unless, and some say Allah gave her the strength, like extraordinary, superhuman strength to shake it, but that's also possible, right? It could have been a miracle that she did shake it. But many of them say, no, she didn't shake it. She just put her hands on it, and maybe, moved herself. You just do your best. And if just a little effort is always rewarded. A little effort is always rewarded by Allah Ta'ala. Allah's ash-shakur, the appreciative. So yeah, that's what I would suggest, my brother. Yeah, and hope that Allah puts blessing in it. Just do your best. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, but whatever you do, don't allow your frustration or irritation with people, disappointment with people, to take you into doing what's haram, or forbidden, to say or do things that are forbidden. That should be the red line that you don't cross. Okay. Okay, my wife texted me saying she can email you suggestions. So Sister Mariam, if you send your email, if you post your email to my wife, Ruqayyat, she's on the chat, Rukayat. You can give her your email directly and she'll give you a really good list, alhamdulillah, a really good list of books. She herself is a children's book author, and so she knows that industry and what's available and what works, and she's really been the one who's taken the lead of that in our home, right? So she's a lot more familiar with really good books for that age. Sister Tazyin writes, Ali Hussein is also doing daily reflections on poems every night on Facebook. Yes, so if you're on Facebook, and he's someone who's worth having a Facebook account just for Ramadan to benefit from. He's Ali Hussein is doing those daily reflections. Yes, thank you, Sister Zainab. Nostalgic remembrance, remembrance, and again, he's a masterful storyteller. He is, he's very deep, right? He's very deep, but he has a way of, and I've seen him connect with youth, and through these movies and through the music they're listening to. It's just really powerful. Maybe sometime in the future, inshallah, we can arrange a talk, a webinar for our youth with your friend Ali. So yeah, that'd be great. I love, and if again, I'd love for you to, Brother Suhail, please feel free to reach out to me and we can organize that. I do need help, these kind of things, as Brother Sajid, Brother Tahir know, putting these events and programs together takes a lot of bandwidth, and even just, do a Zoom webinar. So please reach out to me, and we can talk to the programming committee about bringing people like him to connect with our youth. NBC series on Prophet Yusuf on YouTube. There's a series. Okay, great. So I didn't mention that, but I'm glad to hear that there's a movie that's done. Usually our Shia brothers and sisters are a lot more comfortable doing movies about Quranic personalities and religious personalities, and sometimes the movies are quite good, actually. And they their fiqh, Jafari fiqh, just has, on certain things it's more lenient. Some Shia scholars say having a tattoo is fine, right? All the Sunni scholars say no, and I actually agree with the Sunni scholars that getting a tattoo is changing your body permanently. If you're going to get a tattoo, get a henna tattoo that disappears. But movies and depicting prophets and companions, the Shia scholars have, say they've allowed that. They've allowed that to a certain degree, some of the Shia scholars. So that's why you'll see a lot of Shia media with pictures of prophets and pictures of companions and whatnot. Whereas the Sunni scholars typically don't I've said that that's not permissible. Uh, oh yes, okay, yeah, that's what I said. Thank you, Tamara. So yeah, what I said is if what I said is that certain parts of the Mesnawi would be rated R, the movies, so to speak, or the stories, if they were um, enacted. And the stories in the Quran, they're very discreet. Allah is very discreet, very subtle how He describes things. Like, for example, He doesn't talk about intercourse. He just says touch, right? If you touch a woman, right? So Allah's very discreet with the language He uses. So I don't think I said that the story of Prophet Yusuf was rated R. What I said, if I'm not mistaken, was that a woman seducing a man and men attempting to murder someone is not rated G, right? That's not rated G, and those stories are in the Quran. So I didn't put a rating on it. I just said the rated G. That's some heavy stuff, right? That's heavy stuff. Okay, Sister Amani, wa alaikum salam. Okay, Akhtar, you just said if the movie. Okay, great. Yes, so you got well. Lastly, Sister Ambreen's question, Sheikh Mendes made reference to the movie Just Mercy. Was a connection to Prophet Yusuf? Right, exactly. Okay, maybe also that's what you were asking about. So there is a movie called Just Mercy. That's about an attorney. He's a lawyer, and he's still alive. Brian Stevenson. I actually had the blessing of sharing a flight with him once, and he and I talked. And he is interested in working with Muslims. Those of you who are familiar with his work and who want to support his work, he's really interested in working with Muslims. So, okay, thank you. Yeah, there was a connection to Prophet Yusuf, peace be upon him, and the isolation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may place you in order to bring you to a state of spirituality. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. MashaAllah. May Allah bless you. Pray, duha, get some sleep. MashaAllah. Oh yes, Imam Fode Drame. Yeah. Yeah. Someone writes, thank you. Thank Allah for introduction to Drame. He received the first expansions, book number 4. Yeah, that's the one, Rejuvenation of the Soul. That's a very good one to start with. Was in tears from spiritual revelations. Absolutely. Yeah, Imam Fode Drame is a Rumi for our time. Yeah, and I don't say that lightly. There's a few people that I've met, and he's not the only one, right? He's not the only one, but there's a few scholars that I've had the blessing of meeting who I would say the role that Rumi played in his time, 800 years ago, and the role that he's still playing, that these scholars they're doing that kind of work. And Imam Fode Drame is, again, he's like that, right? He's like that. He's one of those people that's, it's rooted in the Quran, just like the Masnawi is, but it's an original packaging. It's a new packaging. It's a new way of showing us these ancient, timeless, primordial, eternal truths. Yeah. Mashallah, Queen Noor, mashallah. And those of you who don't know, Queen Noor is one of our amazing storytellers right here in New Jersey. We need to have her in the masjid. We need to have her in the masjid and telling stories. And alhamdulillah, we need to go back to storytelling. We need to get off Netflix, get off Netflix and go back to listening to stories under the moonlight in the summers, right? At the fire, around the campfires, and telling stories again, listening to the elders, and not just telling folk tales, but listen to the elders. Like we have people in our communities who are 60, 70, 80 years old, and they love telling stories about their life. We need to just sit down with them, and I really want to see us do this at our masajid. I've been talking to my wife about this for a couple years, 2-3 years now, about something like this. So Sister Queen Noor is someone like this. I love you too, Brother Ramik. May Allah bless you. Alhamdulillah. Allah bless you, mashallah. Sister Tamra, I'm sorry, I said your name. I'm sorry. This is a private message. Okay, so Imam Fode Drame, there's a website, Zawiya, C-A, Z-A-Z-A-W-I-Y-A-H .ca. That's the website of his foundation. They also have a Facebook page where every night they show the recordings of his, reflections on the Quran. So I would just start, like sister Queen Noor. I would get rejuvenation of the soul, and I would just start with that. He has a number of videos on YouTube. Just type in Imam Fode Drame, Fode, and then last name Drame, Drame, and just see what Allah leads you to. He also has retreats and workshops. Before COVID-19, he was supposed to have one in June, I believe, June or July. I don't remember, June or July, but I don't think they'll be having that this year. So yeah, I would just plug in, and he's a very beautiful human being, and mashallah. Okay, brothers and sisters, may Allah bless all of you. Continue to keep Imam Suhaib Sultan in your prayers. If you're not following his blog on medium.com, I encourage you to do that. medium.com/seeking ilham, seeking ilham, ILHAM, seeking ilham. And I pray for his health. And I pray for me and my family as I'm praying for you and your families. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi sallam. Allahumma shfi akhana Suhaib Sultan. Allahumma barik lana fi shahr Ramadan. Oh Allah, bless us in this month of Ramadan. We ask that you heal our brother Suhaib Sultan and heal our sick and have mercy upon our dead. And oh Allah, we ask that you free those who have been wrongfully imprisoned, wrongfully enslaved, Ya Allah, and that you alleviate the suffering of those who are suffering. Oh Allah, we ask that you grant us the realization of these words and these meanings that we have been listening to and reading. Ya Allah, we ask that you complete our light. Oh Allah, we ask that you complete our light for us, and that you make us from those who are beloved to you, make us from those who are seeking you, seeking your face, and make us from those who are sought by you, Ya Allah, without any harm, without any pain, without any loss. Ya Allah, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sallam. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.